Hey guys, we are on day 181 in our Bible reading plan, and today we're reading in the book of 2 Chronicles. We're reading chapters 19 through 23. Now, there is a lot of information that we're going to cover today, and really what I would encourage you to do as you're reading through this section today is really pay attention to the line of David and how God is going to preserve the line of David throughout the accounts we read of the different kings that are reigning over Judah. Chapter 19, we're going to start out with Asa's son Jehosaphat has become king, and he has fought alongside Ahab previously to this, and we're told that because of this decision, the wrath of the Lord is on him. In our previous reading from 1 Kings 22, we were told that he does everything well, that Jehosaphat is a king in the line of David and that he does everything well, but he doesn't completely eliminate the shrines, and then he aligns with Ahab and supports him, and then we're going to see that he continues to align with the kings of Judah and offers them aid, and that is going to be part of his downfall as well. But as we're reading through 19, we're going to see some things he does really well and right. For example, he appoints judges and charges them to judge righteously, and in Jerusalem specifically, we see that he appoints Levites and priests and heads of Israelite families to administer the law of the Lord and to judge over and settle disputes, and he charges them to do all of this righteously. Then in chapter 20, we read that the Moabites and the Ammonites with some Mennonites come to wage war against Jehosaphat, and he declares a fast for all of Judah. Again, he has the righteous actions that he's turning to the Lord. He's seeking the Lord. He appeals here to the covenant that Solomon makes with the Lord and that the Lord makes with Solomon, that anytime his people humble themselves and pray toward the temple, that the Lord would hear their prayers. And so he appeals to that covenant that the Lord makes when the temple is dedicated in the days of Solomon. And the Lord hears his prayer, and he says he'll win the battle for them, that they're to go out, that the Lord, they won't even have to fight, the Lord will take care of it. And so they march out to meet these armies that are coming against them, and the Lord, before they even get there, the Lord sets each of those armies against one another, and they completely destroy and annihilate them, so that by the time Jehoshaphat's army comes out, what they find is just dead bodies everywhere. The Lord has completely given them the victory over the battle. And then we're told that the fear of the Lord comes on all of the surrounding nations. We're told that Jehoshaphat reigned for 35 years. And then we read that he makes an alliance with Ahaziah, king of Israel, to build trading ships. And the Lord is upset about this because he keeps aligning himself with the kings of Israel. And so the Lord destroys all of his work. And then we're told in chapter 21 that Jehosaphat's son Jehoram, he's established firmly as king after his father Jehosaphat. And once he's established firmly as king, he puts to death all of his brothers, whom his father has established in other cities and other fortified places. He sent them away, ideally to strengthen the kingdom. However, Jehoram decides to eliminate any of the competition. He kills all of his brothers, and it says that he follows the ways of the kings of Israel, and the biggest indictment of all, the worst one, he follows the ways of Ahab, and he marries Athaliah, who is Ahab's daughter. But God isn't willing to completely destroy the house of David in spite of Jehoram's evil ways. And so we do read, though, that he does allow for things to happen here. Edom rebels against Judah, and we see that the kingdom begins to split. Edom rebels, and they set up their own king. They build high places to worship. Then Elijah sends a letter to King Jehoram, and it says this. It says, "The Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will become very ill with a lingering disease of the bowels until the disease causes them to come out." And so the Lord brings the Philistines, the Arabs, to attack and plunder Judah, leaving him one son alive, Ahaziah. The Lord does all to Jehoram that he says he would do. He dies a horrible death, and the end of the chapter tells us he reigned 8 years, and he passed away, according to scripture, to no one's regret. He was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. Then we read in chapter 22 about Ahaziah's reign. He becomes king at 22 years old, and he reigns for 1 year. He follows the ways of Ahab. He aligns himself again with the kings of Israel as his father had done. He joins Joram, king of Israel, son of Ahab, to wage war against the Arameans. And this battle doesn't go well. King Joram goes to Jezreel because he's wounded, and then Ahaziah goes and joins him there. While they are there, Jehu, who's been charged with carrying out the judgment of the Lord against Ahab's household, comes to Jezreel and begins to completely annihilate the house of Ahab, which in this case is King Joram and all of his household and anyone who's there with him. We read that Ahaziah's household members who are there, anyone who's part of his group, if they're there, they're all annihilated as well. Now, what's important to note here is that when King Jehoram died and the Lord brought judgment against all of his household, the Lord honored his covenant with David. He left Ahaziah alive so that King David would have a descendant to sit on the throne. Ahaziah comes to power. He rules in the same way as the kings of Israel instead of in the way of his father David. He goes against what the Lord wants him to do. He aligns himself with the king of Israel, and the Lord allows judgment to come on him as well. And what's really interesting here is that once King Ahaziah is killed by Jehu, his wife sees her opportunity. She's the daughter of Ahab. She sees her opportunity to take control, to take over. And so she then goes on a killing spree and completely annihilates the house of Judah, the rest of anyone else who would have the ability or the right to the throne. And she begins to rule. So Athaliah kills everyone. She takes the throne. What she doesn't realize is that one of his sons is saved. One of King Joram's sons is saved. He is stolen away. He's a little kid. He's taken to the temple and he's protected. He's left there. It's Ahaziah's sister actually saves his son Joash, and she hides him in the temple for 6 years. So then in chapter 22, we read that 7 years later, the priests begin to reorganize. They commit to protecting young Joash, the rightful king in the line of David. And they keep watch over him even on the Sabbath. So they reorganize in the temple so that there are Levites that are protecting the king day and night. They go with him everywhere. They then put a crown on him. They proclaim him king. They anoint him. And then they put Athaliah to death. And once she's been put to death, the priest Jehoiada makes a covenant between the people, the king, and God, that they will be the Lord's people again, that they will follow the ways of the Lord. They tear down the altars to Baal. They execute the priests that are serving Baal, and they turn back to the Lord. And then they establish King Joash as king over Israel, and they bring him back into the palace. And the end of chapter 22, verse 21 tells us this. So all the people in the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet after Athaliah had been put to death. And what I want to say today about this reading, there's a lot of turmoil in Israel. We see there's a lot of turmoil in Judah. We see that the kings of Judah have begun making alliances with the kings of Israel who are not following the ways of the Lord. They're not walking in the ways of King David. They are following in the ways of King Ahab. And the Lord makes a big distinction between those two men, that either you are for the Lord, which means that you are walking in the ways of your father David, or you are for Ahab, you are worshiping other gods, you are bringing idolatry into Israel, you are taking the people away from worshiping the Lord. And in that case, you're walking in the ways of King Ahab. It's not okay for the kings of Judah to align themselves with that kind of worship. While God is going to be faithful to his covenant and preserve the line of King David, he is also going to bring the judgment that these actions deserve on the kings of Judah, because they're leading his people astray and they're leading them in the worship of other gods. The Lord is not going to stand by and just allow that to continue to happen. And so he is going to bring about the judgment that their actions have called down upon them. But what's really interesting is that any time that the people of God humble themselves and pray, anytime they remember the story, anytime they remember the covenant, they remembered the covenant in the days of Jehosaphat, that God made with them, that he would hear their prayers when they pray at the temple. In the days of Solomon, when the temple was dedicated, he made that promise. And here in the days of Jehoshaphat, he's still honoring that. And here we see in the days of Joram and Joash that he's honoring his covenant that he makes with David to preserve the line. And what really strikes me about all of this is that our God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that he is the same God. He is the trustworthy, steadfast, loving, faithful God that we see, slow to anger, quick to combat, compassion and mercy, but he is a God of justice. And so he is willing to wait for his people to turn. And it seems like so often as we read the Old Testament, people can't they can't square away this dichotomy of the God of the Old Testament and the Jesus we see in the New Testament. But we have to understand that as we're reading through these accounts, that God has been a patient God. God has been a loving God. God has been a God who is faithful to the things that he has said he will do over and over again when his people have been unfaithful to the covenant that they have made over and over again, until finally he sends Jesus to us to do the thing that we could never do, to be the one who faithfully fulfills every part of the law. I hope that encourages you today. I know it encourages me as I read through the Old Testament. All signs continue pointing to God, to his steadfast love, to his plan to bring Jesus, to free us from this crazy cycle that we keep seeing repeated over and over again, where people keep choosing their sin. They keep wandering away. God made a way for us to return to him once and forever through Jesus Christ.